Hi, everyone. So glad you're here. This is S.J. Thomason with Christian-Apologist.com. Today I'm going to talk a little bit about what I saw recently on YouTube with the former Atheist Republic, either owner or founder or somehow representative, Jim Majors. Jim Majors was talking to a couple of other people on a channel about biblical prophecies, and he made some assertions which I found incredibly false. So I am going to play first some of his assertions, and then I'm going to refute them. Stick with me.
I would say that Daniel is very precise. I would even say that Ezekiel is very precise. But the problem is that they're so precise, like they actually kind of damn themselves. In fact, Daniel is just a reworking of another prophecy that failed, and he's saying, oh well, that's not really what he meant. What he meant is this, and Daniel also purports to be, or actually, it presents itself as being authored 400, 500 years before it was actually authored, so as to give the illusion of prophecy.
Oh, okay. So two things with that one then. So Daniel was purportedly written in 600 BC.
Correct. 600 to 700. Yeah, right.
Okay, and so what you're telling me now is that that's not the case.
Right. It was really authored during the middle of the second century.
How on earth can anyone know that?
Well, because up until a certain point, we see Daniel being very, very specific of having, just really, really nails all of the prophecy leading up to the second century, the middle of the second century, and then all of a sudden he starts using more illusionary, like a lot of iconography, just being really vague. And and one of the first prophecies that he gets wrong is the death of the king. He gets that one wrong, but and pretty much everything after that he gets wrong.
So he did get one.
And a lot of the things that are used in the text, a lot of the grammar and the syntax that's used in the text are syntax and grammar that is comparable to mid-second century text. I'm sorry, mid-second century BCE, just to be clear.
Okay, so
Okay, so let's just note what he's already pointed out. He has made the claim that Daniel has much earlier writing than Daniel himself said in the book, number one. He's also pointed out that the syntax is not consistent, and he's made a couple of other claims. So just keeping these in mind, and we're going to address these in a moment.
Now I've seen, and there, Floyd FP is in the live chat. I'm a huge fan of his work, and especially when he and Ozzy get together. Floyd FP did with Deeper Than Dogma a video that I've referred to often, which was, and I think I sent you this video. I don't know what you thought of it, but it was
I enjoyed it.
Yeah. Let's see. It was a biblical prophecy with Daniel, and he had mentioned similar objections. That, and you had said this before too, like at least one instrument in Daniel didn't exist until the second century BC.
Right. Well, and Daniel was never originally considered to be prophetic. It wasn't listed in the book of the prophets. They weren't considered. He wasn't considered a lesser prophet or a later prophet. Rather, the book of Daniel was put into the category that the Hebrews called the writings. Which none of them were considered prophetic. Daniel is the only text that today is considered to be prophetic that was never considered prophetic then.
Okay, so we just sort of changed that after the fact. Right. So I guess that could explain. I like that plan. So if I want to be a prophet, all I have to do is say I wrote something 200 years ago and predict the Trump getting elected and all that other stuff, and poof, prophet. So I like that. Ansgar, could you do me a huge favor and sort of put that sort of in the business notes for like next week to just we'll each become prophets, and we'll pick something. So just become a prophet. Yeah. I think that's a great part of our business plan. We'll be incorporating that. But didn't he? I mean, he did successfully, like to the year, if I understand. Somebody brought up S.J. Thomason loves Daniel.
Correct.
And he did to the year predict the death, the coming and death of Jesus Christ, did he not?
No, he did not. And no,
Okay,
and it
okay.
really takes a lot of manipulation, a lot of bending, and ignoring a lot of contemporary practices that were that they would have seen around the time that Daniel was actually written. So it's like supposedly the year 36 is the end of like the 490 years. But if you take off some years, you know what, she really it's just really jacked up. It would take me forever to tell you all the intricacies and things that she takes out and adds to it in order to get there. In fact, over time, we see even the church fathers who have a different understanding of this 70 weeks of 7 prophecies.
Okay, so
let's get into that. He thinks I would be jumping ropes and everything else, and you'll be the judge. The angel Gabriel, and this is in Daniel 9, suddenly appeared to Daniel and gave him a prophecy. In Daniel 9:24-27, it says, 77s are decreed for your people and your holy city to finish transgression, to put an end to sin, to atone for wickedness, to bring in everlasting righteousness, to seal up vision and prophecy, and to anoint the most holy place. Know and understand this. From the time the word goes out to restore and rebuild Jerusalem, until the Anointed One, the ruler, comes, there will be 7 sevens and 62 sevens. It will be rebuilt with streets and a trench, but in times of trouble. After 62 sevens, the Anointed One will be put to death and will have nothing. Who does that sound like? The people of the ruler who will come to destroy the city and the sanctuary. The end will come like a flood. War will continue until the end, and desolations have been decreed. He will confirm a covenant with many for 1 7. In the middle of the 7, he will put an end to sacrifice and offering. At the temple, he will set up an abomination that causes desolation, until the end that is decreed is poured out on him. According to the Jews for Jesus, 77s of years equals a period of 490 years, which is 70 times 7. A 490-year period was decreed for the accomplishment of the final restoration of Israel. The Jews for Jesus link the purposes of the 77s as follows. 1, to finish transgression. You could compare that with Isaiah 59:20. 2, to make an end of sins. Compare that with Isaiah 27:9 and Ezekiel 36:25-27, and Jeremiah 31:31-34. 3, to make reconciliation or atonement for iniquity. And 4, to bring an everlasting righteousness. And 5, to seal up vision and prophecy. And 6, to anoint a most holy place, the Jewish temple. There are many comparisons, again, throughout Ezekiel and Isaiah and Jeremiah that are similar. There are several times when the word went out to restore and rebuild Jerusalem. The first option to start the countdown is in 539 BC, with the decree of Cyrus, king of Persia, which permitted the Jewish people to return to Jerusalem. This appears in 2 Chronicles 36:22-23, and Ezra 1:1-4, and 6:1-5. A second option is in the decree of Darius, king of Persia, which let the Israelites continue their building project in 515 BC. Another option is 458 BC, when King Artaxerxes of Persia decreed that any of the Israelites in my kingdom, including the priests and Levites who volunteer to go to Jerusalem with you, may go, and that appears in Ezra 7:13. The final option is when King Artaxerxes sent Nehemiah to Jerusalem with letters to the governors of the Trans-Euphrates for protection to rebuild its structures in the mouth of Nisan in the year 444 BC. This appears in Nehemiah 2:1-8. Biblical scholars have supported this date. They say that this date gives us the preferred start date of 444 BC. The final option seems the most likely because Nehemiah and Ezra were instrumental in rebuilding Jerusalem and bringing back its exiles. With the blessings of King Artaxerxes, Nehemiah traveled to Jerusalem and became its governor in 444 BC. He worked with numerous Israelites to rebuild its walls and structures. Though he faced much opposition, he persisted, knowing that his efforts were supported by the Lord. Once the walls were rebuilt, 42,360 exiles returned. Ezra spent much time carefully reading them the book of the law of the Lord. Many seemed unaware of the laws and their many transgressions. They confessed their sins and repented, promising to carefully follow the law in the future by not intermarrying with other groups of people, not working on the Sabbath, and keeping the Lord's house purified. They also purified themselves ceremonially and offered great sacrifices to the Lord. Nehemiah 12:27 says, "At the dedication of the wall of Jerusalem, the Levites were sought out from where they lived, and were brought to Jerusalem to celebrate joyfully the dedication with songs of thanksgiving and with the music of cymbals, harps, and lyres." The 77s are divided into 3 separate units: 7 sevens, 62 sevens, and 1 7. During the first time period of 49 years, Jerusalem would be built again with street and moat, even in troublous times. The second block of time, 62 sevens, a total of 434 years, immediately following the first, for a total of 69 sevens, or 483 years. At the end of the 483-year period, unto the Messiah, the Prince. In the time of Daniel, people believed years contained only 360 days, which when multiplied by 483 comes to 173,880 days. Dividing that by 365.25 gives us 476 years. Adding that to 444 BC and accounting for the no zero year results in the year of 33. According to Hayner, 1978, the report to Nehemiah occurred in Chislev, which is between November and December, 445, and the decree of Artaxerxes occurred in Nisan 10 on March 30th of 444 BC. Using a spring start date in 444 results in the prediction that Jesus would be put to death in the spring of 33. Numerous scholars have supported the following date for Jesus' crucifixion, April 3rd of 33. Furthermore, as predicted by Daniel, the temple that had been rebuilt was destroyed by the rulers, the Romans. This event occurred in 70 AD. Now let's speak a little bit about the dating of Daniel. The book of Daniel begins in 604 BC, which is 18 years prior to the destruction of the first temple in 586 BC. Daniel and several other young men, and they were pointed out as young men, in 1:4, were deported from Judah to Babylon under King Nebuchadnezzar. The book ends 2 years after 70 years of exile in 532 BC. The book is written in both Hebrew and Aramaic. The Aramaic portion is in Daniel 1:2-4 through 7-28. The first 6 chapters detail historical records of this time period, while chapters 7-12 detail Daniel's visions. Perhaps its detailing of historical records led to its classification within the Jewish scriptures as writings instead of prophets. Skeptics have often pointed to this classification to suggest that Daniel's prophecies were of minor importance. It should be noted that Daniel is placed between the books of Esther and Ezra and Nehemiah, which also contain histories and were written in the early Persian period. Lamentations, written by the great prophet Jeremiah, is also in the writings. Furthermore, Jesus, who was considered a Jewish rabbi, referred to Daniel as a prophet in Matthew 24:15. In his book Against Christians, Porphyry, in 285 AD, put forth the notion that Daniel was written no earlier than 165 BC. Porphyry made this assertion based on Daniel 11:21, which he believed was a prophecy about Antiochus Epiphanes IV, and sorry if I slaughtered that name. Porphyry determined that Daniel must have written the book in hindsight, not in advance. Others in recent times have jumped onto his bandwagon, making similar claims of later dating. These later dating scholars are biased by the refusal to acknowledge fulfilled prophecies. If we didn't have the Dead Sea Scrolls, which scholars believe are dated to around 150 BC, skeptics would have said Daniel was written after 70 AD when the temple was obliterated, just as he prophesied in 927. We have numerous reasons to believe the book of Daniel was written when Daniel said it was written, between 604 BC and 532 BC. I will list a few of them. For one, Daniel refers to himself in the first person in much of the book and makes the dating claim himself. Second, the languages are written in a way that is consistent with the ancient forms of the languages in those centuries. They were not written in a way consistent with dating around 165 BC. According to Wilson, in 1997, the Aramaic of Daniel aligns with orthography, syntax, and etymology with Egyptian papyri of the 5th century BC and of the Aramaic of the North Semitic inscriptions of the 9th, 8th, and 7th centuries BC. Wilson notes that Daniel has a mixture of Hebrew, Persian, and Babylonian words and differs from the Aramaic of the Nabateans. The Nabateans also spoke Aramaic, yet this group of Arabs was not established until around the 3rd century BC. Numerous scholars have identified Old Persian words that were no longer in use in the 2nd century BC. One example is the word Ashpenaz, which is in 1:3 of Daniel, which was unknown in the 2nd century and translated as a personal name with an unknown meaning. Yet it meant innkeeper, according to Haufwat in 2013. Skeptics also point to the instruments mentioned in Daniel, which also were mentioned here by Nick and confirmed by Jim, suggesting that these instruments were Greek in origin and therefore not likely to be in Babylon. The terms thought to be, and I'm quoting here, the terms thought to be of Greek origin are spelled Sartyq or Kiqara or Kiqarag after an older Greek form of zither. Other words related to the triangular lyre with 4 strings, a foreign word possibly Aramaic in Greek, which is another kind of triangular harp, and a word that referenced an orchestra or possibly a bagpipe. Or it might be a Doric pronunciation for a tambourine or a noun in opposition to a preceding one. These Greek loans are explainable since the famous Orientalist W.F. Albright demonstrated that Greek culture penetrated the ancient Near East long before the Neo-Babylonian period, and this is cited in Lau 1999. Additionally, the ancient historian Josephus recorded that in Appian 1:8 that the canon of the Jewish scriptures was closed at the reign of Artaxerxes between 465 and 425 BC, which also goes against Jim's dating. Furthermore, Daniel is linguistically quite similar to Ezra, and both books are both in Hebrew and Aramaic. The bilingual composition of Ezra, and this appears in Hebrew 1:1 to 4:6, Aramaic 4:7 to 6:18, Hebrew 6:19 to 7:11, Aramaic 7:12 to 26, and Hebrew 7:27 to 10:44 cannot be explained only on the basis of the presence of some official Aramaic letters, because the Aramaic text often extends beyond those letters intended to be rendered in their original language, just as in the book of Daniel. And the first official letter, the famous Decree of Cyrus, is rendered in Hebrew. Moreover, the first change from Hebrew to Aramaic occurs in precisely the same literary manner. And you can compare that between Ezra 4:6-7 and Daniel 2:4, which is a proof that the term Timira in Daniel 4 cannot be considered a later insert to indicate a late redaction, say after the loss of the original language text. It is rather a mark of authenticity, and this is a quote again from Lau 1999. These are just a few of the many reasons to reject the notions that Daniel was written no earlier than 165 BC. But consider that even if the book were written so late, it still contained prophecies of specific dating that Jesus fulfilled, as noted at the outset. Thank you so much for your time. I hope you'll like, subscribe, share this with your friends, and come again. Bye-bye.